Hey you guys, and welcome. My name is Carmen and I'm going to be showing you guys how to make a velvet choker with crystal beads and a flower. This is a velvet choker we'll be making today, and I've decided to make my YouTube page. The name will be Crafts and Bags, and as I mentioned earlier, my name is Carmen and I'm happy that you guys are joining me. And we're going to go ahead and start with our supplies. So the first thing we'll need is a pen or a pencil and a piece of paper so we can write our measurements down. We'll also be needing measuring tape so that way we can go ahead and measure our neck. To that, we're also going to need a ruler so we can go ahead and measure our trim and ribbon and so we can cut it. We'll also need some sort of marker or pencil to mark our center point to our ribbon. Scissors, you can choose any type of scissors you'd like. We're also going to need pins so that way we can go ahead and pin our ribbon and our trim in place so it doesn't move when we're going to go ahead and sew our pieces together. We're going to need a needle and thread and a flower or some sort of decoration to decorate our choker and the trim that will be placed around our neck. This is the velvet ribbon we will be using that will be placed over the trim, and our knot clasp that will close the back of our choker together. And we will be hand stitching that along with the flower. I'm also going to be using a different type of trim. This is the trim that we're going to use, and we're going to make it into a circle, almost like a little nest, and our ivory flower will sit on top of that, and we will also stitch those two things together. And acrylic beads, flat back beads, so that way we can go ahead and glue them with our glue. This particular bead box has many different sizes, and I will be using the clear, but you can use any color of beads you would like. And you can also use any type of trim or color of ribbon. This is our Aleene's tacky glue, and when you use it, don't be afraid to use a lot. What we can do is we can go ahead and start thinking of the design what we'll be using for our choker. So I'm laying down my trim and where I would like my ribbon to be positioned, and I'm just playing around with the design at this moment. That looks pleasing. And this is the trim where we're going to go ahead and make a circle out of. We're just going to go ahead and loop it around this way. See, I'm just making a circle. We're going to hand stitch that circle like that, and then we will place our ivory flower over that, but of course you can place anything you'd like. We're going to go ahead and cut that from our ribbon, and it peels right off, and that's what it's going to kind of look like. I'm going to give you a general idea as to what it's going to look like once it's stitched together. It's going to be nestled in there perfectly, and it'll be sitting to the side, but you can sit yours on the centers however you'd like your design to be. So we're going to go ahead and cut our trim. Let's move our things aside first. So we're going to go ahead and cut the trim that's going to go around our flower. And our flower measures a little bit over an inch, or about an inch. Our trim measures 3.5 inches. And now we're going to go ahead and stitch that. Now what I will also do is I am gonna knot it at the end, but I'm not gonna cut it off the thread because I'll be stitching the flower right over it. See? Now it ends up giving me a 2-inch circle. And that's exactly how it's gonna look once we stitch it. And be careful not to stitch or show your thread on the ivory flower. If it was a black flower, it wouldn't matter, but since we're using black thread, what I'm going to do is stitch the petals onto my trim. You can barely see it. The petals are like really in there in the center of the flower, and I'm making sure to go around and really stitch that flower to keep it in place. And I do a good job stitching it. You two do a good job. That way it doesn't fall apart on you. You can use glue, but I'm using a stitch so that way the flower is nice and soft and it won't be hard. Right there I'm knotting it, and I'm going to go ahead and cut the threads. And it's okay if I cut above because this particular design has a bunch of threads just dangling all over the place. And I'm just making sure that my flower's in place and how I'd like it to be. That's what it looks like. And I'm just going to show you how it's going to kind of look. You can make yours bigger if you'd like. And it's time for us to measure and cut our trim. So first we're going to measure our neck. My neck happens to be about 14 inches long. And for the ribbon itself, I'm going to go ahead and add 3 inches to that. And for the trim, I'm going to add 1.5 inches, giving me 15.5 inches. The reason we want to have a longer ribbon is sometimes our trim tends to move, and since it's velvet, velvet tends to stretch and move, and it's okay to have the ribbon a little bit longer, because at the end we're going to go ahead and stitch both ends together so you won't even be able to tell if the material ended up moving on you or not. So at this moment I'm going to cut 17 inches of my velvet. And now I'm going to cut 15.5 inches of my trim. The trim is smaller because it's the velvet that we'll be folding over the trim at the end with the edges to give us a nice edge. There you go. Fold your trim in half and your ribbon in halves, so we can go ahead and mark the center point. That way we can go ahead and pin our ribbon and our trim at the center point. I'm using a white quilter's pencil. And we're going to go ahead and do the same thing with our ribbon. We're going to also fold it in half, and I'm going to press with my thumb so that way it creases right in the center, and then I will mark the center piece with my pencil. And we're going to go ahead and place them one right over the other to make sure they seem to be even from both ends. And we're going to go ahead and start pinning them in place. Be careful to pin them properly, and don't rush the pinning process. I have sped up the pinning process for you, but we want to make sure that we pin this in the right spot. That way we don't make it harder for ourselves when it comes to sewing. I want my ribbon to be sitting almost in the center between, well, right in the center of the trim. It's actually almost the size of the trim itself, the ribbon on the trim. So we'll be folding them in half like that, the edges. Alright, so we have a general idea of how it's going to look, and we're going to use a straight stitch on our sewing machine. Do not rush this process because we don't want our ribbon and our trim to be moving out of place. You will see me stretching the ribbon and to try to keep it in place without moving, so you'll see me going over it, almost like pressing it with my finger. We're using a straight stitch, and don't forget to always back stitch and come back again. You'll get a better view in a little bit as to how I'm straight stitching. So a straight stitch is just a straight stitch, like a line. There you go. I'm being very careful, and of course I've sped it up for you. But while I was doing this, I was taking my time. Make sure not to get the little beads caught with your sewing machine, so that way they don't break or you break your needle. See? And I'm not really pulling hard, I'm just guiding. See, it kind of moved to the bottom of the trim. You see I have like about ½ an inch. Go back and back stitch it, and that's fine. We're going to go ahead and fold those in half and stitch it. So you see how it looks now that it's stitched. It looks nice and neat and straight. Taking your time means a lot. Alright, now we're folding it in half by an inch towards the back, and we're going to go ahead and do a straight stitch. Remember, it's towards the back because we don't want that part to show in the front. And don't forget to back stitch. I would hate for you to do all this and you forgot to back stitch and it starts falling apart on you. Go ahead and cut the thread. And we're going to repeat the same process on the other side. Fold it by an inch and do a straight stitch. Remember to take your time and always do your back stitches. There. Now we're going to add the knot clasps together, and we're going to hand stitch those. And they will be facing the right side of the ribbon. We want the pretty design to show in the front. And I'm going to do several stitches. I don't want my clasp falling apart, so I do quite a bit of stitches. There's nothing more irritating to me than for you to make a garment and only apply a few stitches and then it falls apart on you. You have to restitch and restitch. You might as well do it right the first time and do plenty of stitches. That way it doesn't fall apart on you and it lasts longer. And don't forget to make things look neat. tying a knot several times, and now we're going to go ahead and measure, put it against our neck. I measured it against my neck and to make sure I knew exactly where to place the other clasp, and I'm sewing it in place. Now there's a little hook. You see that little hook where the knot slips through? If that hook is too loose and the knot seems to go through, you can tighten that hook by adding a couple stitches, stitching it and making it smaller. I did that. And don't forget to make several knots at the end. And that's what it looks like. And that's how it's tied. That's what's going to look on the back. Really pretty. It's important to make the back pretty too, not just the front, so when you have your hair up, you see a pretty design. I folded it in half, that way I know where my center point is, and I want my flower to be off to the side. And we're also going to go ahead and hand stitch the flower. So I'm going to be using the black trim, and I'm going to be stitching them together all around, putting plenty of stitches, that way my flower doesn't fall off. I didn't use glue because I wanted that part to be soft and not stiff. Sometimes when you use a lot of glue, it tends to make whatever portion you glued a little stiff and hard, and I don't want that. So we're stitching that, and don't forget to tie it plenty of times. Some of the beads kept getting in the way, so I had to be unhooking those beads. There we go, that's what it looks like now. And now we're going to be applying our beads and just making sure everything's out of the way, little threads. And I'm going to be looking at the design I'm going to be making with my flat back beads. I'm picking them up and playing around with the particular design I want to make. I'm trying to be as close or as even as I can be. Try to measure everything. See, I've moved them because I realized the other side was a little too close. So don't be stingy with the glue when you do put your Aleene's glue. Once it dries, you allow it to dry for 24 hours. The part that pops out, you see the glue sticking out, that's going to be really easy just to peel off. Just hold your bead in place, and then once it's dry, it'll peel right off. You'd be surprised. And whatever does show, if it's a little bit, it's alright because the glue dries clear. And the reason I ask you not to be too stingy with the glue is because we don't want the things falling apart. See, I'm measuring. It's one pinky away. You can use your fingers as a measurement. And we're also going to do that at the clasp, the little knot where I stitch the clasp in place. I'm going to put a bead to make it look pretty and sparkle in the back. I really like Aleene's glue because I've had things that I made 10 years ago and it's still stuck. Nothing has fallen apart, and that's with me using enough glue. Allow it to dry for 24 hours. And voila, your choker is complete. And I'm just showing you another variation that I made. I made one for my daughter and one for me. And of course you can choose whatever colors you'd like. I mean, it's your design. whatever dress you're going to be wearing, whatever type, you know, for Halloween, whatever. On hers, I put a snap button, and I show you how to put a snap button on the video where I showed you how to make a cuff bracelet, and there you go. You have 2 variations, and you can create as many as you like. Creativity is up to you. Well, I want to thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a lot. I hope I sparked some sort of creativity in you. Remember to watch. I'm going to try to make a video once a week, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you once again. My name is Carmen, and my YouTube page is called Crafts and Bags. I'll also be showing you how to make handbags and a bunch of neat things. Well, thank you for watching.